Welcome back to Make Me Good. I am your host, David Karli. So today we're going to be talking about something called metabolic freedom. Very interesting word. A lot of us, myself included, as we age, struggle with our metabolic health. Most of us put on weight. We have trouble getting rid of stubborn body fat. Our metabolism tends to run down. We're tired, fatigued, stressed, anxious. Ben Azadi is here, and he's coming off of a best-selling book release. Metabolic Freedom is the topic of that book. Ben, welcome to the broadcast, and thank you so much for being here.
David, it's an honor.
A lot to cover today. Very cool topic.
So much. Let's go.
And you've been very busy. You work a lot with communities, transforming lives. So you're not just a coach, but you have a very interesting backstory. So I'd like to start maybe with that, kind of your struggle with your own obesity and how you were able to kind of overcome that and get into this track of not only correcting your own metabolic health, but helping others to do the same.
Yeah, I actually grew up here in Miami, Florida. I'm one of the rare locals that's born and raised here. It's hard to find those, but I'm one of them. And I lived a life of a very unhealthy lifestyle as a kid here in Miami, Florida. I ate standard American diet. We know how toxic that is. My mom actually worked at 2 Kentucky Fried Chickens and Coral Gables, not too far from you. And she brought me home Kentucky Fried Chicken, so I ate it as a happy kid, right? Not knowing any better. And she did the best she could do with her level of awareness and resources. But I say that because I was very unhealthy as a kid. I was obese physically, obese mentally. I struggled with addictions to drugs, alcohol, video games, toxic relationships. And in 2007, when I was 23 years old, going on 24 years old, when most people, David, are graduating school, starting a family, starting a career, that wasn't me. I was actually on the internet looking for ways to end my life because I was depressed and suicidal and just wanted to give up.
And this would have been about what age?
I was 23.
That was 23.
Yeah,
okay.
Back in 2007, 23 years old. Yeah. And I didn't go through with it only because my mom. Now, she didn't know I was doing this behind the scenes and looking for ways to end my life, but I kept thinking about my mom and the devastation it would have caused her if I took my life, and I didn't want to do that to her. So it stopped me from pursuing it. At this point, I was 250 pounds, 34% body fat. I would go to my doctor's appointments, explain my symptoms to my doctor. High blood pressure, prediabetes, erectile dysfunction, back was going out, my whole body felt inflamed, poor sleep.
At a very young age.
At a very young age, right? And not once did my doctor ask the question, what are you eating, Ben? Or let's talk about your lifestyle. No, it was a suggestion for a medication, a prescription. And I felt like I was too young to go on a medication at that age, so I declined it. But I left those appointments hopeless, lost, confused, like so many people looking for the root cause, and they're just visiting doctors that are treating symptoms. And it started with me, the shift into getting healthy actually started with the mindset. I started to read books from Dr. Wayne Dyer and Bob Proctor and Tony Robbins and these incredible authors. And they helped me take ownership and responsibility. And that was the starting point because I was blaming my genetics. I was blaming my slow metabolism, my enabling family members. And I heard Dr. Wayne Dyer say, if you keep blaming other people for your problems, you're gonna have to hire a psychiatrist for everybody in your life in order for you to get better. And I thought, damn, that is true. So I took responsibility. And then at that point, David, started moving my body, eating real food. I didn't do keto or fasting back then, just simple changes. And in 9 months, I went from 250 pounds to 170 pounds, so 80 pounds of fat loss. I went from 34% body fat at my highest to 6% at my lowest at that point. And all of the depressing thoughts, the suicidal thoughts went away. And that's what got me into the health space. I became a personal trainer. I had a CrossFit gym in Miami for several years. And then in around 2015 is when I got into keto fasting, more metabolic health. And just one more note, this exact building, I used to train clients in this building.
Is that right?
It's so funny. Like in 2015, 2016, I came
we've come
here.
Full circle today.
Full circle, yeah.
Fantastic.
There's the gym here by the pool, I remember it. I would train the clients here as a personal trainer. I don't do that anymore. But anyways, that's the backstory. Yeah. That's what got me into the space.
Now that is a lot to unwind.
Yes, there's a lot there. Yeah.
But I want to make sure one of the fascinating things that you've done, and you cover this in your book, is you link the parallels between mindset and metabolic health, which a lot of people wouldn't necessarily correlate. Obviously, mindset is important, as is metabolic health, but you link the two together. And it sounds like in the backstory, there's also a heavy psychological piece, which also led to your success. So let's cover that early, because I think it's a very important piece for people to hear, is the importance from your perspective of mindset. And is it more the driver of the habits that lead to success with metabolic health, or is there a direct cause and effect relationship from your perspective?
I love that you want to start here, because it's my favorite thing to talk about, and I think it's the most important thing. So chapter 10 of Metabolic Freedom is all about this. It's my favorite chapter in the book. I'm already writing my next book, and it's an expansion of chapter 10. It's called Mental Freedom. And it's everything, David. It really is, because we could make the conscious decision, I want to change. I want to balance my hormones, or I want to lose 50 pounds, or I want to do keto, or I want to XYZ. It could be a conscious decision that we make because we're tired of the status quo. But subconsciously, we will find a way to sabotage ourselves if our self-image is not changed. And we could never outperform our self-image. I'll explain what I mean by that. If somebody has a self-image of somebody who's overweight, like I did, because I was overweight for 20 years. So my self-image was, I'm an overweight person. We can make a conscious decision to do keto or fasting or whatever it is and lose the weight. And we'll make progress because we made that conscious decision, I'm going to change. But if we didn't work on the subconscious level where that self-image is, we will find a way, maybe in a month, maybe in 2 months, to sabotage ourselves to go back to the old conditioning. So maybe we lose 10 pounds the first month, and we don't work on the subconscious mind, and we will gain those 10 pounds back. We will, binge eat, whatever it is to gain it back. The premise behind this comes from a book called Psycho-Cybernetics from Maxwell Maltz. It's a 1960s book.
60s, okay.
Yeah, the 60s. And he called it the greatest physiological discovery of his generation, and still to this day. And here's what he discovered, and it's related to what I just shared. He was a world-renowned plastic surgeon, and he would work on patients that had these really wicked facial disformities. They were unhappy, they were depressed, they were self-conscious because of the way they looked. So they would hire this guy, Dr. Maltz, to perform surgery, and he would perform amazing plastic surgery. And this doctor noticed, even after the surgery, these patients were still unhappy, depressed, and self-conscious. Some of them would literally look in the mirror and still see the facial disfigurement, even though it wasn't there, because they didn't change the self-image. The self-image identified with the facial disfigurement. So nothing in their life changed until he worked on their subconscious mind, changed their self-image. Then they were happier, had more confidence, and not depressed.
It's almost a form of learned helplessness, if you will, right? Which we hear about, and we're talking about body image issues in part, but it's applicable to many things where we're self-deprivating, right? I mean, what causes the relapses? What causes the failure? Obviously, habit building is an issue of consistency and discipline and focus and so forth. And you work with a lot of people, to improve metabolic health. But what are the triggers that derail people most commonly from, okay, we get them on the right track and then they relapse, as you say, or fall off track? What are you seeing as a trigger that someone listening might recognize to be able to say, oh, okay, got to refocus. Yeah. Let's get back on track.
Well, it's their self-image trying to course correct and go back to match their self. If they're not working on their self-image, the body's trying to course correct. So I'll give you an example of what I mean by that. Somebody's been really good for a month. Like they've done keto, fasting, whatever, they're taking their hormones. And then they just find themselves like walking into the pantry and just start eating Oreos. It's just their body's way of matching the self-image deep down, right? So you could be aware of that and be like, oh, this is just my subconscious mind trying to course correct. And you could stop right there, or you could eat and mess up the diet or whatever it is, and then just forget about it and keep going. But so many people will eat that meal and turn one bad meal into one bad weekend, and then one bad weekend into one bad week, and then all of a sudden it's been months since they've been off course. So the point is that if you have a setback, it's not about the setback. I always say it's about the get back. Just forget about it. Success is never a straight line. You know this, David. It's always about, correcting yourself and learning. And so many people think just one little hiccup is like the devastation of their career or whatever it is, their dietary choice. So the environment is going to be important because the environment determines the thoughts, the self-image, your behavior. So many people make these decisions to change, and even if they're working on their self-image, they don't change their environment, and their environment wants them to be the old version of themselves. If you hang out with people who are eating pizza and drinking beer, and you're making a change, it's uncomfortable for them, so they're going to make comments, and it might pull you back. So cleaning up your environment, understanding that it's your self-image trying to correct itself, and then working on your self-image are the three ways that I believe you become unstoppable.
Yeah, it almost parallels addictive behavior in some respects with alcoholism or drugs. And we know food addiction is a real thing.
Yeah, I had it.
Yeah. So I see the parallels there. When you work with clients, we hear so much about the mental game and mindset and reticular activating system and the power of visualization. I mean, are you using a lot of those same principles in this capacity to help people get that mindset piece right? Obviously, you've prioritized mindset as a critical. What are you using to help people get on track?
Yeah, I use universal laws, which is exactly what you said, right? The reticular activation system is really interesting because that's something we want to reprogram, right? And if we're like if we've taught that brain, this little brainstem in our brain, to look at all the problems and all the crazy things that are happening in the world, we'll see more of that. But when we start focusing on gratitude and opportunities, then all the problems have turned into opportunities for us, right? So a simple way to do that is journaling, is writing down. And what I mean by journaling is actually writing down on a card. And this is how I was able to hit New York Times, by the way. I did this with New York Times. I do it with all my goals, and I do it with all my students. I literally have a card, and I write on the card, I'm so happy and grateful, now that, and then I write either the self-image, the goal, whatever it is, in present tense. And you read it every day. You read it in the morning when the subconscious mind is most impressionable. You read it before bed. Throughout the day, as you can see, I take it with me. And that's one way of manifesting what you want in life. It's not just about reading it, it's about taking action. It's not about the law of attraction, it's about the law of action with the law of attraction. But writing down what you want in life, whether it's a health goal, a self-image, whatever it is, in present tense, and writing it on a card and reading it every day. You do it for 30 days, it'll change your life. And it's a part of the 30-day protocol in the book.
Let's talk about keto, because it's a big, component now. I know you didn't start with that, and maybe we can get into how you did have that weight loss success early without it, but I know it's become an important part of your programming now, and it's a huge topic, right? Perhaps looked at from too simple of a perspective. But what I want to talk about next is the link that you make between hormonal health and metabolic health. And I suspect that keto has a role in that. So get into how you made that parallel between hormonal health and poor metabolic health, and how that can correct itself or course correct through your kind of programming.
Yeah, I love keto as a tool. It's a great more of a metabolic process than a diet.
And I think most people know keto, but maybe just let's kind of go through it quickly in case people don't know.
Yeah, so keto is, we've all heard of the keto diet, the ketogenic diet, but it's more of a metabolic process than it is a diet. There's nothing new about keto. It's just nuanced. It's actually been around for as long as humans have existed. But what keto is essentially is you drop your carbohydrates, you restrict your carbohydrates, for most people under 50 total grams of carbs per day coming from non-starchy carbohydrate sources, so green leafy vegetables. Increase protein and fat. Now you lower glucose, lower insulin. Now your body switches fuel sources from burning sugar from food, carbohydrates especially, to store body fat. And that body fat is being sent to the liver. The fatty acids are being sent to the liver. The liver produces ketones. You're in a state of ketosis. So that's what it is. It's all insulin is the driver there, lowering insulin. Now with inflammation and hormones, that is everything. You know that, David. I mean, every single cell, all 70 trillion cells have these receptor sites, these integral membrane proteins that connect to hormones, connects to oxygen, connects to nutrients. And if there's too much cellular inflammation, which a lot of people have, your hormones are not getting into the cell. And you're not going to feel great. You're not going to burn fat. You're not going to produce energy. You might have levels of testosterone in the blood that are, let's say, normal, but if it's not getting into the cell, you won't notice a difference. Even with thyroid hormone, and I'm not saying not to take testosterone, not to take thyroid, but what I'm saying is the number one step here is to lower your cell inflammation for those hormones to get into the cell.
Okay.
Ketosis. Mm-hmm. Ketones are anti-inflammatory. Ketones are, when you're in a state of ketosis, it upregulates glutathione within the cell. So of course we know that's a very important antioxidant. It lowers cell inflammation because fat and ketones burn a lot cleaner than glucose. The analogy that I share is that glucose, when you're only burning sugar and glucose, it's like a truck that has all this smoke coming out of the exhaust pipe, right? It's a very inflammatory for the environment. But when you're burning fat and ketones, it's like a gas stove. It's just, it's really clean energy. So it lowers inflammation at a cell level. It allows your hormones to get into the cells more efficiently. And what it does for the mitochondria is the biggest benefit. And I think there's one thing that a lot of us in this space, we disagree with a lot of things like keto, carnivore, plant-based.
Right.
There's a lot of arguments, but I think one thing we could all agree to is that supporting your mitochondria is very important. Well, how you get there is different, but supporting your mitochondria is very important. Ketones are one of the most important things you can do for your mitochondria. When you're in a state of ketosis, your mitochondria produce 400% more ATP than when you're burning sugar. And that's because it creates mitochondrial biogenesis, the creation of new mitochondria. And the cells that have the most mitochondria are the cells that get the most benefit. The brain, the eyes, the testicles, the ovaries, the heart. These are the cells that have the most mitochondria. So that's what ketones will benefit the most. So you have a process, I'll recap this, as you're lowering inflammation, you're lowering insulin, you're increasing glutathione, and you're allowing your hormones to get into the cells more efficiently.
Yeah, it's an interesting parallel because we know metabolic syndrome leads to a state of chronic inflammation, which is linked to all-cause mortality. Your chance of dying from anything, all causes, right? So, but I had never thought of it from an intracellular perspective. So is it, and I don't want to geek out on this too much, but is it a receptor binding issue or is it an intracellular problem? You mentioned glutathione intracellularly. What opens the cell up to receive the receptor?
It's extracellular. Well, it's actually a combination of both because the receptor sites are integrated in, and then there's also on the outside. But it's the reduction in cellular membrane inflammation that I'm trying to get to the point here. So when you lower cellular membrane inflammation, now everything just functions better. All of your hormones, there's all they get into the cell more efficiently, nutrients, oxygen, and then you have that upregulation intracellular with glutathione. So it's kind of both to answer your question.
Yeah, it's amazing to me when we talk about chronic inflammation, how god-awful that is across the board for virtually every physiologic process in our entire body. And we all battle it as a process as we age. So similar to orthopedic issues, which I deal with all day long, which are also a chronic battle against chronic inflammation, it very much applies to that. I want to stick to some principles in the book because it's really quite excellent. I'm going to read you a few quotes from the book, and I want you to respond to it because there's some really cool stuff. Let's go to metabolic freedom. You say in the book, metabolic freedom means you can effortlessly shift between fuel sources, burn fat efficiently, and stay energized without being handcuffed to food or stimulants. So I want you to elaborate on that because it's a critical piece of the book, critical element, but I don't know that people will perfectly understand it. Can you get more into that metabolic freedom concept?
Yes. Yeah, it's really about metabolic flexibility, having a metabolism that burns sugar when it needs to, carbohydrates, and then when you're not eating carbs or when you're restricting carbs, burns fat and goes back and forth without any hiccup, meaning no symptoms, you feel good. I love keto, I love fasting, I love carnivore, I love all these ancient healing tools. However, I'm not dogmatic about it, and I don't think we should do continuous ketosis.
Right.
I'm a fan of going in and out, and that's what it kind of means. That's metabolic freedom and flexibility. Unfortunately, David, 93% of Americans, according to a 2022 study, 93% of Americans are unhealthy, metabolically unhealthy.
Yeah.
They're stuck burning sugar. And again, there's nothing wrong with burning sugar and glucose unless you're only burning sugar and glucose. And 93% of Americans, they're in a keto deficiency. They forgot how to burn fat. So their first step is to burn fat. And then the next step is to achieve metabolic freedom, where they go back and forth from burning sugar to burning fat.
I want to point out, you don't advocate no carbs ever. You actually use carbs as part of your program.
Correct, yes. Yeah.
So it's not a pure keto play. Sometimes you'll carb load. And then is that, in orthopedics and bodybuilding and stuff, we talk about confusion principles, right? Keep the body guessing. Is this similar to that? Because, the body gets used to ketosis and then it becomes more efficient at ketosis and then it doesn't work as well. You plateau. So is this body confusion principles what you're driving at there?
You nailed it, bro. Yeah. Absolutely nailed it. Because every great fitness coach, personal trainer, that's what made P90X so successful. Muscle confusion. You change up the routine, the body keeps adapting. Same thing, I call it metabolic confusion, same thing. We want to continuously adapt. So there's some days where you're doing ketosis, fasting, and you're getting more autophagy cellular repair.
Yeah.
Then there's some days where what I call metabolic flex out, where you're doing actually high carb, lower fat, no fasting. And the magic is in the balance there.
Yeah, so my background's in regenerative medicine, so you hit a point there that I want to talk about. The body's capacity to fix itself, which I suspect you'll agree is limited by inflammation processes.
Yeah.
So we reduce the inflammation, we improve the body's ability to regenerate intracellularly within the cell. Now, is that a function of mitochondria, or is it just the inflammation reduction itself?
I think it's hand in hand, you know, so it's the cell membrane, reducing the inflammation at the cell membrane level, but then also at the mitochondrial membrane level.
Right.
So I think it's the same thing, but I think they both influence each other.
Now, a practical point, because I've taken body fat down to 5%. You said you went to 6%, and that's really hard to do.
It wasn't sustainable for me
No,
too.
it's not sustainable. It was funny. So a funny anecdote. So when I was doing that, I was doing it for a charity. Actually, we set body goals for a charity, and mine was to take body fat to 5%. I'm ambitious.
Yeah, you are, dude.
But I got to 6% really easily, and I could not get that last 1%. I struggled for days and weeks. Finally, my trainer said, just stop eating. And I said, what? He's like, just stop eating altogether, because we had gone 0 carb. But I think what happened actually is exactly what you're describing, and that is I kind of plateaued on this weight loss, and the body adapted, and I couldn't get that last piece. So it took drastic measures. One of the things I struggled with, especially, and I noticed this whenever we do like a cut in bodybuilding or something, there's an initial brain fog that you have to get through, and then it clears. But what is that mechanism behind that? Because one of the hardest things that I find if I bring carbs down, because I'm doing procedures on patients and I have to focus, and I can't have that brain fog piece. What causes that initial brain fog when you pull calories and carbs out of the equation? And how do we fix it or mitigate it?
Yeah, that happens a lot. There's a couple reasons why it happens, and then there's some solutions. So, number one, when we're eating carbs, we know that we're spiking glucose and insulin, and when we lower the carbohydrate intake, we dramatically lower our insulin levels, which is terrific. And with that reduction in insulin, we shed extra water weight, which is why so many people lose like the first 5 pounds, 10 pounds, mostly water weight, which is great. You're going to look lighter, feel lighter, awesome. But with that shedding of extra water weight, the kidneys go through this diuresis process where it sheds a lot of electrolytes and minerals. Mm-hmm. That is one of the causes to fatigue, brain fog, what they call the keto flu, which is really carbohydrate withdrawal symptoms. So the solution, and if this is the problem, the solution would be to keep your minerals and electrolytes up before you start cutting your carbs.
With aggressive hydration, or because we're trying to drive water back into the cell, right?
We're trying to drive not necessarily water, but minerals and electrolytes.
Well, isn't that the carrier though?
Yes.
The minerals carry the water, right? Water follows the minerals, salt, if you will.
Yeah. So you want to drink high quality spring water, throw in some high quality salt or some minerals in there. Do that as soon as you start cutting, or even right before you start cutting, to replenish the lost electrolytes.
And is that something you have to do kind of continuously through the day, or it's kind of bolus it in the morning and it carries you for a while? How do you count? So if I'm coming to you saying, okay, I want to cut, Ben, and every time I do it, I go through this brain fog. You say, okay, let's get your electrolytes corrected. Let's get your water balance corrected. Is it a protein issue as well? Can we offset some of it by bumping protein up? How would you walk me through that early process to make it as painless as possible and to maintain a focus during that early process? The hardest part for me.
Yeah. So before I even answer the electrolyte thing, there's a step that I would do even before that. So the first step that I would recommend is not to aggressively cut the carbohydrates right away. Yeah. Right. So most people eat 200 to 300 grams of carbs a day. I wouldn't recommend going from that to under 50 grams in a day. So the first step I would recommend is let's gradually start reducing your carbs every day. Let's say if you're at 300, let's go to 250 on day 1, 200 on day 2, until by day 7, you're at under 50 grams.
So it's relatively rapid reduction now. It's pretty quick, over a week.
It's a week, a week. But
it's not weeks at a time.
No, 1 week. Yeah. And we could do it in 1 week. And I've taken probably 9,000 people through this protocol. Mm-hmm. And when they do it the right way, which I'm going to continue outlining here for you, no symptoms, you feel great, you can still do what you can still do what you need to do. Mm-hmm. So that's step number 1. In combination with step number 1, there's something that I call the 2-2-2 rule that you start doing day 1 to day 7. So the 2-2-2 rule incorporates a certain set of dietary fats that teach your metabolism as it's lowering glucose by lowering carbs to switch over to burning fat for fuel. So the 2-2-2 rule is 2 tablespoons of coconut oil or MCT oil every day, 2 tablespoons of olive oil or avocado oil every day, and then 2 tablespoons of butter or ghee every day.
Does it matter where it's timed? Is it a morning thing?
With all your meals.
With all of them?
Yeah,
Okay.
you have
Each
it
time.
spread out throughout the day. You don't have all of that in each meal, but you have all of those throughout the day. Does that make sense?
So you're almost training the body to start using fats, even though it hasn't started using its own fats
Correct.
yet.
Yeah.
Got
You're
it.
giving it a little bit of a buffer before it switches to body fat.
Okay, so it's a conversion from you're carbing down, but you're increasing healthy fats.
Correct.
To get the body accustomed to burning fats. And then as that process continues, it starts to naturally transition to burning its own.
Correct. And after we get you in ketosis, which should happen by day 7, we actually manipulate the fat and lower the fat and increase the protein. Because
Okay.
I want your body to start tapping into more body fat.
And what's an average protein target? So someone weighs 180 pounds.
I do it based off of their goal weight. So
Okay.
if they're already at their goal weight, it'll be 180 grams of protein.
Okay.
But if
Okay.
their goal weight is 150, it's 150 grams. So whatever, 1 gram per
1 gram
pound
yeah,
of their
1 gram
ideal
per
body
pound.
weight. Yeah.
Yeah, got it.
And then the electrolyte thing, you want to drink that every day, as I mentioned, in the morning and then sometime in the afternoon.
You, in the book, made an interesting analogy. I believe it was a car analogy between the was a Pinto
and the Porsche.
the
Yeah.
Porsche and the Pinto.
Yeah, the
I thought
Porsche.
it was a really cool way of thinking about it. But go into what you said in the book, because that jumped out at me when I saw it.
Yeah, so I was comparing what a cell would look like when it's burning sugar versus burning ketones.
Yeah.
And the Pinto analogy, right, that old beat up car is like a cell that's just stuck burning glucose. It's turning into like a senescent zombie cell. You know all about that.
Yeah.
But when you switch fuel sources to like ketones as an energy source, it's this sleek Porsche 2025, whatever your favorite Porsche is, that drives really fast. It's beautiful. It's clean. So that's the analogy, right? It's just a better fuel source. I'm not saying it should be your only fuel source. We already made that clear. But so many people are just stuck in the Pinto. They're stuck burning glucose. It's time to get into the Porsche. It's time to burn fat for fuel, experience and feel what that feels like. And then there comes a time and place where you go back and forth burning sugar and burning fat.
So I want to kind of end with current events type conversation and get your opinion. Obviously, we're seeing this wave of GLP-1 use, and I want to get your comment on that. But also, before we do that, I don't think I've ever seen our food in the spotlight like it is at the moment with an administration change and a refocus on preventative wellness and preventative health, with food being one of the most egregious targets right now. You say what to that trend? Obviously, it's a good thing, but where would you like to see that go? And what type of policies do you think we need to put in place to get a handle on it?
Well, I know this. In the United States, we spend $4.6 trillion on healthcare every year. Mm-hmm. If that was a GDP, it would be the 4th largest GDP in the world. Mm-hmm. Yet, we are sicker than ever before, and pharmaceutical companies are richer than ever before. And we rank around 37th. The United States is about 37 in the world in terms of health. There are third world countries that do better than us. One out of every $4 spent on healthcare is spent on diabetes, primarily type 2, which is a metabolic disease, and it's 100% preventable, 100% reversible type 2 diabetes. Mm-hmm. So I'm all in with the Make America Healthy Again. I'm all in for whatever changes are needed in our food supply to get the poison out of the food. We know that Europe, they live healthier lives than us. Italy, they have banned glyphosate. They have banned these red dyes that we're starting to finally ban here. They have a fraction of the obesity. They have a fraction of the diabetes. They don't work out more. They don't have these toxic ingredients. And in our food supply, it's the perfect delivery to give you these toxins. So we need strict policies. We need to ban high fructose corn syrup. We need to have restrictions on seed oils and the way that they process these bad fats. And seed oils, I know there's a lot of, we could get into it if you want, but seed oils are a big conversation now. But I will say this, we should not wait for this to happen. Hopefully these changes happen. Hopefully RFK puts them into place. Hopefully they ban these ingredients and we are healthy again, but we should not wait. We vote with our fork now. And Bob Proctor once said to me, he said, If everybody swept their own front porch, the entire town would be clean. Meaning, take care of you, you take care of you, and we'll all take care of each other. So I think we need a lot of policies change, and I'm excited about what's happening, but I'm also a little skeptical because I don't want to rely on the government.
Well, I think if you look at childhood obesity, where the kids don't have the maturity to make those decisions, it becomes a parental issue, and they can't differentiate Fruit Loops from eating eggs right in the morning. So I think the other challenge is, and this with social media, if one person says ketosis is the greatest thing in the world, you have another person on the same day saying it's the worst thing in the world. Everything is going to kill us. I saw cruciferous vegetables are going to kill us. Kale is terrible for us. We're seeing this, right? And how does the consumer, from a nutritional standpoint, from a dietary standpoint, because you're an authority on this, how do they weed out what they should listen to and what they shouldn't when they're looking at that phone?
Yeah, I want to hear your thoughts on this as well, but it's a challenge, right? It's really difficult. A lot of conflicting information. What I always tell people, and I think it's still accurate with the question, is to find one or two people, a personality, a social media person, somebody, an educator is what I'm trying to say. Find one or two people that you resonate with their personality, the way they teach, and then go all in with them. Give them 90 days. And see what it does for you. Do some labs before, do some labs after, see how you feel. And if it worked for you, got amazing results, stick with that person.
Yeah.
If it didn't work for you, find somebody else. But if you choose 5, 10 people, you're going to be conflicted.
Are you a guy who follows and tracks biomarkers, or are you more a macro person? I want to see the fat come off and your energy go up.
Oh, I'm big on labs. Yeah.
So it's very similar to what we're seeing in the anti-aging and longevity space, where biomarkers, and I do agree with this by and large, are a metric of health. I think there's more to it than just biomarkers. Body composition, in this case, certainly is another one, because you can be skinny fat, right? You can be skinny and unhealthy, correct? So muscle mass has come into the discussion recently as the longevity organ. So anyway, this refocus. Let's go to GLP-1s, because you can't go or look anywhere without being barraged with GLP-1s, mostly positive. But as use continues now, we're starting to see some negative. What's your take? Because my concern with the GLP-1 movement is it's a passive, make me good. It's a passive modality. It does the work for you. So we lose the very thing that you said was so critical, which is the psychological and the motivational and the habit building piece, because you don't even have to think about it. You just stop eating because the medications slow down your gut. Right, and Ghrelin and all of the hormonal things that are occurring to stop the signals going to your brain to tell you that you're hungry.
That's right.
What's your take on this GLP-1? Is it a good thing, or is it a bad thing, or is it somewhere in between?
Yeah, it's a tough one. So I'm not an expert on it. I don't use it. I don't recommend it to anybody. I have colleagues who use it. I hear anecdotal stories. I read some of the research. I think it's a combination of both where I stand today. I think it's some good and mostly bad, actually.
Yeah.
I would say probably 80-20, bad to good. And here's the good. The good is that for some people who are just in such bad shape, it's a good way to just kickstart them, and then hopefully they can make some lifestyle changes and get some momentum. They just lost hope. They just want some momentum.
Right.
That's good news for them. They could do that and get some momentum, I guess. And there's some people that struggle with ADD, ADHD, some mental disorders, and there's some reports that low dose Ozempic, or low dose GLP-1, I should say, helps with their cognitive function.
Right.
Now, what's the bad news? Well, you lose weight, good, but a portion of that is muscle mass, and you just said, David, muscle mass is the king of longevity, or it's so important for longevity, and I agree, it is. So we don't want to lose weight, we want to lose fat. And these GLP-1 drugs, you lose weight, which is muscle included. And then you have a situation where you're losing muscle mass, you have the Ozempic butt, the Ozempic face, we've all heard about this. And then to your harnessing the innate intelligence, doing lifestyle changes. Do I think there's a time and place for them? Yes. Do I use them or recommend them? I have not yet. And I don't know if my mind would be changed, but I think there's so many other ways that you could achieve sustainable fat loss outside of the GLP-1 drugs.
So maybe a tricky question, but we'll challenge you a little bit here.
Okay.
So if we went the GLP-1 route and took somebody into ketosis and worked in intermittent fasting, can we move things too fast?
Probably. And we also don't have studies on these drugs long term too. So how long are they using it? What's the dosage? There's so many nuances here. Can we move things too fast? I mean, sounds like we can. Ketosis is already a stress to the body.
Right.
Fasting is another stress. And then losing that much extra weight because of the GLP-1 drug, another stress. You might cause a thyroid issue. I don't know. Yeah, possibly could be too much for the body to adapt to.
Well, the body has to adapt to a change in glycemia and blood sugars, right? So if we bottom them out too quickly because they're not eating as much volume and we're basically pulling sugar via carbohydrate out entirely, can we bottom out, make them hypoglycemic?
Yeah.
Right, basically.
Possibly, and if they're not producing adequate ketones, then they will be hypoglycemic, yeah.
Right. Let's talk about insulin resistance. It's a big topic,
yes.
obviously, and it's a big part of what you do is reversing insulin resistance to drive a healthier metabolism, right? Metabolic freedom is freedom from insulin resistance in some respects, correct?
Yeah.
So how does ketosis and insulin resistance work together? Or I shouldn't say ketosis, because there's more to it than ketosis.
Yeah.
But how does your programming and insulin resistance work together?
Yeah, this is a really important topic. Those 93% of Americans I referenced earlier that are unhealthy, they have either full-blown insulin resistance or variations of it. It's the common denominator. Chapter 2 of Metabolic Freedom dives deep into this and why insulin, and speaking of labs, so many doctors are not testing a fasting insulin. It's missed so many times. They're testing maybe a fasting glucose, maybe an A1C, which is great, but they're not testing a fasting insulin. It's a huge mistake. And here's the reason why I think they're not testing it. If you have a high fasting insulin, there's not a medication to prescribe for high insulin, only high glucose. So why should they test it? And what's interesting, the Whitehall study 2 that I published in the book shows that you could have full-blown insulin resistance for 6 to 14 years without your fasting blood sugars or A1C changing. Because the pancreas is so busy producing massive amounts of insulin to clear the excess glucose until those receptor sites for insulin go deaf to the screams. And now your blood sugars rise, and that could take 6 to 14 years. Then the person's diagnosed with prediabetes, if it's caught, and if not, eventually diabetes, which opens up the door for all these other conditions.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, glycation is occurring along the way.
Oh, yeah.
Which is a disaster, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So your proteins are basically bound by
Sticking to the
sugars
sugar.
and not working effectively.
Stripping nitric oxide, creating vasoconstriction, all the bad stuff.
That's the concept of the silent killer.
Yes.
Right? Diabetes is the silent killer because you may not have a lot of symptoms of poor metabolic health until you're pretty far down the rabbit hole.
That's right.
But in your book, it's never too late, right? It's, there's always an opportunity to try to get and reestablish health, metabolic health or metabolic freedom, as you
100%.
put it. But is this something is ketosis appropriate for kids?
There's different ways to get into ketosis, right? We have an approach where you increase your healthy fats, lower your carbs. There's also an approach where kids are very active. And if let's say a kid goes to bed at 8 p.m. and they go to sleep, and let's say they wake up at 6 a.m. It's 8 hours of sleep in between there. They're fasted, and they go for a workout without having breakfast. They should be in ketosis, right? Meaning there's different ways to get there without manipulating their diet. So I think kids that are naturally healthy and not snacking and grazing and eating processed junk naturally go in and out of ketosis without having to actually be on a keto plan, if that makes sense. Do I think it's appropriate for kids to put them on a keto plan? No, I don't. I think they need to be more mTOR, more growth. They need healthy food, for sure, whole foods, but not necessarily keto. But I also think it's natural for them to be so active and healthy if they're going in and out of this ketosis state, just naturally by the way they live their life.
Yeah. To take a step back, just because your wearable reminded me, I want to go back to the hemoglobin A1C and fasting insulin issue. So when we draw biomarkers, it's a snapshot of a point in time, which for the longer term markers like A1C is useful, right? Because we can see kind of long-term glycemic control. But in this age of wearables, which gives us longitudinal information over time about what's happening in the body, I assume you've become a fan. You're wearing wearables now, but how do you use wearables to help people drive this process of metabolic freedom most efficiently?
Yeah, it's a cool time that we live in because we have all these things available to us. So, continuous glucose monitors are a great idea. I talk about them in the book. Gives you, as you mentioned, like not just a snapshot of like a finger prick reading of blood glucose, which is fine, but it gives you a 24/7 look at your glucose level. So continuous glucose monitor, you would strap on, wear it for 14 days, and you could see what stress, different foods, exercise does to your blood sugar levels. I think that's really important, really valuable, especially if you have a coach reviewing it and understanding what to look for. Then we have different metrics like I'm wearing the Oura Ring, but looking at heart rate variability, deep sleep, REM sleep, resting heart rate, seeing how you recover in between workouts. So I'm a fan of it. I love the data. I think it's cool to look at. I like to use it as like a game to make some changes in my lifestyle, different biohacks, and see what changes with my metrics. So I'm a fan.
We didn't talk about sleep, but it's a major element of the book. And I think most people advocate that not just quantity, but quality of sleep is very, very critical. As this metabolic reboot, if you will, occurs, are you naturally seeing sleep cycles improve, or is there programming built into what you do with your clients to help them sleep better? Temperature, darkness, all the things that we hear about most commonly. Is it a natural thing that occurs, or are you implementing practice to help them?
I'm implementing it right away. It's a foundation. So we're doing some small changes, as you mentioned. The temperature changes to 65, 67 degrees Fahrenheit on the thermostat, dark bedroom. I mouth tape, I wear a sleep mask, I go the full measure. My fiance makes fun of me all the time, but I look really weird at night. But I do all of that, but I'll recommend different things, and I'm working on the sleep right away. And as they get healthy and less inflamed, it also improves their sleep too.
Do you Are you able to pull people out of the need for those things?
Yeah, several people have gotten off of it. Yeah, as they've lost the weight, lowered inflammation, they've gotten off of it.
What do you think it's more of, the weight piece, which is more of a mechanical obstruction, or the inflammation piece, or it's a combination of both?
Man, I don't know. Yeah, I used to think it was mostly the weight. Now I think it's a combination of both the inflammation and the weight. But it goes hand in hand, really.
Yeah, sure.
What do you think?
It probably depends on a lot of factors like the body habitus, the length of the neck, posture, right? Because clearly there can be a mechanical obstruction. But I can't help but think that every time we get control over inflammation, everything seems to get better. I just can't.
So
it doesn't matter if it's sleep apnea or joint pain or brain function or whatever. It doesn't matter. So
all roads lead to inflammation.
They really do. So what's next, Ben? Obviously, you have big ambitions to reach a lot of people. Congratulations on the book, though. New York Times bestselling.
You're next, my friend.
Status.
Let's go.
So we're working on it. Where does Ben go from here?
I just launched a program with Dr. Daniel Pompa. I'm not sure you're familiar with Dr. Pompa, but we just launched a program, and we're going to create the biggest case study ever done on naturally reversing type 2 diabetes. We're going to reverse type 2 diabetes in 1 million people in the next 10 years, and we're going to track every single person, and we're going to shove this in Big Pharma's face and show, hey, you got medication to manage. We did it in 1 million people with lifestyle changes. So that's the next thing that I'm excited about, because I lost my dad to the complications of diabetes, and I
New York Times bestseller. Where can people find this?
Thank you, my friend. Thank you for having me.
Yep.
The book is available everywhere, bookstores, Amazon. We have a free course that we're giving away with interviews as well. So it's a 12-lesson course on metabolism, and interviews in the course with Gary Brecka, Dr. Daniel Pompa, who I mentioned, Dr. Jason Fung, Megan Ramos, and Cynthia Thurlow. If you want all those free goodies, if you will, you can go to metabolicfreedombook.com, buy the book there, put your name, email, order number, you'll get the free course and the interviews.
Well, I certainly applaud your efforts. Congratulations, not only on a personal success, but influencing so many lives, and now bigger picture to influence cultural changes within our country and our world today. So thank you very much for being here. Fascinating discussion, and keep up the great work.
Thank you, David. Keep up your great work.
Awesome having you.
Thank you for having me,
Thanks.
bro.
Appreciate it, brother.
Thank you.